Now to another story that is rocking people around the world. 50. That is the number, 50. The number of innocent lives lost after a gunman opened fire on Muslim worshippers in 2 New Zealand mosques on Friday. Authorities are now calling the suspect a, quote, right-wing extremist terrorist who sent a hate speech-filled document to the prime minister just minutes before the attacks. The tragedy has sparked global outrage and put a new spotlight on the rise of hate groups abroad and here at home.
President Trump condemned the attacks in the Oval Office on Friday, but when asked if he agrees that there is a growing threat of white nationalism, here's what he said.
I don't really. I think it's a small group of people that have very, very serious problems, I guess.
All right, for fact's sake, white nationalism is on the rise, particularly in the United States. Members of the FBI.
No different from white supremacy. Can we please always remind our audience, because all the time we hear a nationalist is the same as a patriot.
Yeah, no, it's not. This is a much more serious matter. Members of the FBI, members of Congress have said it themselves.
White supremacist extremists will likely continue to pose a threat of lethal violence over the next year.
The FBI recently has had in the neighborhood of about 1,000 pending domestic terrorism investigations. Those cover the waterfront, from everything from white supremacists and sovereign citizens, militias, all the way to anarchists.
The threat to our security is greater with these groups than it is with these sort of foreign fighters or, foreign-inspired individuals, and we just need to confront this.
Now, there's plenty of real data to back all of this up. The reality is that the number of hate groups operating across America rose to an all-time high last year, a total of 1,020. That's according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which tracks hate groups. This issue's been around for a while. The Anti-Defamation League found 71% of deaths linked to extremism in the United States between 2008 and 2017 were committed by far-right attackers. A total of 387 people were killed by domestic extremists in the United States during that period of time. Another study from the Nation Institute found that between 2008 and 2016, those far-right attacks or attempts outnumbered Islamist incidents by almost 2 to 1. Since 2016, America has seen white nationalism rise at a faster rate. Last October, 11 people were shot to death in a Pittsburgh synagogue, and a Florida man was charged with sending more than a dozen pipe bombs in the mail to well-known critics of the president. In 2017, a protester was hit by a car and killed during a rally of white supremacists in Charlottesville, Virginia. President Trump downplayed the issue of white nationalism then, too. After the violence in Charlottesville, you might recall, he said there were, quote, very fine people on both sides. Steph?
Joining us now, Director of Cal State's Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism, Brian Levin, and Washington Post columnist and Assistant Professor of Global Politics at University College London, Brian Klaas. Mr. Levin, to you first. One study your center has conducted found that hate crimes in 30 major U.S. cities are up for the 5th year in a row. So those who are saying hate crimes aren't going up, I turn you over to data, not politics. Can you elaborate on this?
Yes, and it was some real interesting data that we have. We're coming out with our report this month. In 30 of America's largest cities, hate crimes rose for the 5th consecutive year. And if that translates nationally, when the FBI introduces their data right before Thanksgiving, that'll be the 4th year nationally. What else have we seen? We've also seen a rise in homicides by white nationalists in the United States. Our data is a little different than our colleagues at the ADL. We look at homicides that are just motivated by that ideology, and we've seen an increase. And indeed, the Tree of Life shooting last October was the worst massacre of Jews in recent American history, actually all American history. Also, hate crimes have increased across Europe. 2017, Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, England, Germany, Austria, and a variety of other countries, all increasing. One other thing, though, that I think is interesting, when one type of hate goes up, it has a gravitational pull, and that might be what we're seeing with respect to what's happening in the Netherlands today, but also Among the biggest increases last year included anti-Semitic, but also anti-white. African Americans, though, continue to be the most targeted group in major American cities, along with gays and Jews.
All right, Brian Klaas, you had tweeted earlier that Trump has cast himself as a central figure in a global ecosystem of bigotry and hate, and it isn't something new. Interestingly enough, when Donald Trump was associated with this because the shooter in New Zealand had mentioned him, I think normal people would go out of their way to distance themselves from that sort of thing. Donald Trump just didn't do that. When presented with the opportunity to do so by reporters, he didn't take that opportunity.
He didn't, and he downplayed it and minimized it, as he always does. And beyond that, you have two really intriguing data points on either side of this attack that I think are really disgusting, honestly. One is that while the attack was going on, Trump's most recent tweet was a link to Breitbart, which is one of the most Islamophobic websites in the American media system. And then after the attack, 2 days later, when Judge Jeanine Pirro of Fox News was under fire for the fact that she had made extremely bigoted comments towards Muslims, Trump decided to spend his day defending her on Twitter, doubling down on this idea that we should actually defend anti-Muslim bigots, when in fact that ideology is the same ideology that's shared by this shooter. And so, I think when we have something where an act of violence occurs, the normal human instinct is to condemn it without any sort of equivocation. And Trump is simply unable to do that when the shooter is somebody who is a white nationalist. And at some point, we just have to say this is not a coincidence.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think because Trump has part of his base that is involved in this, and I think there's winks and nudges that are happening. And I think it's also that Trump has been like this for a very long time. I mean, back in 2011 and 2012, Trump scored political points by accusing or insinuating that Barack Obama was some sort of secret Muslim. And then during the campaign, he not only said that we should have a database to track Muslims, which is an insane and horrible thing to say, but he also, even more egregiously, proposed banning all Muslims from entering the United States, an entire religion, simply because of their religious beliefs. And, this gets downplayed because the actual Muslim ban, his words, not mine, ended up becoming a travel ban. But it was still originating from his actual original proposal, December of 2015, where he said a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. And if you said that about any other group, it would end your political career. And somehow there's this mainstreamization of bigotry under Donald Trump towards Muslims, which is really unfortunate and something we need to call out.
I remind you, Ali, when the travel ban or Muslim ban was being put in place, it was Rudy Giuliani who said, Donald Trump called me on the phone and asked me how he could legally enforce a Muslim ban.
Yeah.
So we've heard it from them.
Right. Brian Levin,
Yes.
let's point out something else. A poll conducted by ABC and Washington Post back in 2017 found some alarming numbers. 9% of Americans find Nazi views acceptable. Kind of fascinating to me. I mean, it's not a huge number, but it's kind of 8.99% higher than I would have thought it is.
Yes, and we're seeing far-right parties in Europe. And I'm not talking about conservative parties. I'm talking about like UKIP and other type of parties. Parties that, like David Cameron, conservative prime minister, call them loons and racist. Parties like that are polling in the double digits in places like France, Germany, and elsewhere in Europe. One other quick point that I wanted to just interject here on that Muslim ban. Listen to what we have with respect to data. His Muslim ban proposal came out on December 7th, 2015, 5 days after the horrible attack that affected our community in San Bernardino. We saw a spike in anti-Muslim hate crime the day after and in those following days. When candidate Trump made his Muslim ban proposal, we saw an additional spike above and beyond the spike that we saw after the terror attack. Flip it. 6 days after 9/11, President Bush speaks of tolerance at the Islamic Center of D.C. and says people who intimidate women wearing head covers should be ashamed of themselves. Hate crimes dropped by 2/3 the next day and 2/3 the next year. And no, we didn't hoax this data. It's FBI.
Very interesting, guys. Thank you very much for the work that you do on this to help us understand it. These issues are on the rise. Yeah, well, sort of baffling. And then on the other hand, to what Brian Levin just said, if leadership comes from the top and tries to tamp these things down, perhaps we can start to go in the right direction. Thanks to both of you, Brian Levin, Brian Klaas.
Was it a week ago the president was saying that the Democratic Party, in his words, is now anti-Jewish? I don't understand the root of all of this and why any of it is gaining support.
But what more basically I don't understand is if somebody did what they did in New Zealand and identified you in their manifesto, you'd be on DEFCON 9 trying to make sure that you're disassociated with that, right? Going out there telling everybody this can't possibly be the case.
Obviously, the president could not control what that person wrote in their manifesto.
And one doesn't have to believe he's connected to it. But the idea that one just discounts that, if my name is dragged into something, I'm going to work hard to get it
Following the attack, the president worked hard to defend cable news hosts who just a week ago were pushing anti-Muslim narratives.
Yeah, it is baffling. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.